Hello, and welcome back to the Sometimes Daily Show. I'm Michael Palmer.
I'm Philip Edwards, and yesterday Xbox had possibly their biggest mic drop moment in history. They announced the Series S out of nowhere.
Well, that's not really true, is it? They had their hand forced by yet another leak. Brad Sams on Thurrott.com was the first to show off the console design, pricing, and specifications. Then, in what appeared to be Xbox losing their last shred of patience, they announced the console on Twitter by saying, quote, "Let's make it official. Xbox Series S. Next gen performance in the smallest Xbox ever. Looking forward to sharing more soon. Promise." End quote.
Credit where credit's due. Whoever's running the Xbox Twitter account has been nailing it lately. But let's get into the minutiae of this console, then we'll discuss what we think this means for Xbox on a grander scale. Now, over to Michael in the Stats Center.
Michael here in the Stats Center. Let's start with the specs. They say all digital, so no disk drive for all the old school people who still buy physical. 1440p at up to 120 FPS, DirectX ray tracing, variable rate shading, variable refresh rate, ultra low latency, a custom 512GB SSD, 4K streaming media playback, and 4K upscaling for games. The price is, well, there's no easy way to say this. It's $299 or £249 for people who use the correct currency. That is incredibly low, like mind-bogglingly low, and will be launching November 10th. But that's all from here in the Stats Centre. Back to you, Philip.
Thank you, Michael in the Stats Center. And now that we've got the information out of the way, let's speculate wildly. My first question for you is, who is this for? What niche of the market have they seen that they're trying to target?
I reckon that they're going for the sort of people that aren't too fussed about having a physical library. I reckon they're going to go for the sort of all digital people, people that are just going to look to get the cheaper end of the console because they just want to play the games. They're not fussed about, the entire thing that's been such a semi-ritual for people for many years, going to things like midnight launches and stuff like that, which obviously wouldn't have happened this year anyway. And I can't see any other audience that this would be aimed at. It's just there. It's the cheap option, no disk drive.
See, the only thing I can think of is I reckon they have to be targeting a casual audience. They've got to be attempting to make this like the Wii, where it's a console for everyone, a console that your grandma's going to pick up.
I could see that, get them into the Xbox family and try and entice them more and more, not only with the low price of the console, but also with Game Pass Ultimate. Throw that there, hundreds of games, and you're just paying a small amount per month.
I think that is the way. I think Game Pass is it. I think the goal is to get them into the ecosystem, and then once they're in Game Pass, it's just like Netflix. You just keep paying for it. Anyway, next question. Do you think the lower performance is going to affect the gaming industry? And by that, I mean, like, is it going to affect gaming advancements? And is this going to cause Xbox to be labeled as the weaker console again?
Uh, I think from the standpoint of your hardcore Sony fan, yes, they're going to use cheaper, um, the cheaper price and the lack of high-end specs to swing it into a more favorable outlook for Sony and say, look, Xbox couldn't even stick to their guns. They made this, and this is so much weaker than the cheap digital version of the PS5. This is so much weaker than the PS5. PS5 clearly knows what's going on. Sony clearly knows what they're doing. I I can't see it being a good thing for Xbox other than the price.
So, with the fans being how they are, do you think the Series S not doing native 4K is going to cause the negative effect, or do you think more people are going to care about frame rate? Has the ratio shifted now?
In my opinion, frame rate is far more important than resolution. I know it's an unpopular opinion, but it doesn't matter if you've got the sharpest image quality in a game if you can only do 10 frames per second. Quite frankly, I would much rather play a smoother game than a jagged, sharp one when you stand still for long enough. But I don't think that's going to make a single dot of a difference. I reckon just because it's upscaled rather than native, that's it. That's going to be what people are going to attack about it.
Do you think the price, I mean, £250, is it going to push Sony's hand? Is it going to make them lower their price? Because everyone kind of theorized that the Sony was going to go in at 600.
I reckon it's going to have a positive effect for Xbox. It gets more people in at a very ground level. People are going to look at it and go, excellent, £250. Even if they put it at £300, they're still going to look at that and go, excellent, that's nice and cheap. I can get that. I can enjoy all of the third-party titles that are going to be across all of the platforms. I can play all of that. I don't reckon it's going to affect Sony in the slightest. This is the Series S after all. This is the secondary console. You know, Xbox announced the Series X first. That was meant to be their flagship, their big selling point, their other reason to be able to say, look, we've got the world's most powerful console. This is going to be the best of the best for the consoles for this generation. And this is the price that's actually come out. I mean, if the Series X was priced at 400 or even 500 and Sony were going to price their console at 600, that would force Sony's hand. That would force them to reconsider. But because we've had no confirmation from Microsoft about the price of the Series X, Sony aren't even going to care. It's probably a blip on their radar. They've gone, that's nice, and they're just sort of keeping their ears, just listening for the Series X price. They don't care about this one.
The last thing I'm wondering about, the hard drive. It's a custom 512 gigabyte SSD. Is that too small? Is it going to hurt sales, even though you will actually be able to plug in an external HDD? But 512 gigs is really small.
To people like us, it will affect sales. If you look at the size of games nowadays, the most recent Call of Duty games, GTA 5 in its current file size, and a handful of other games that are much more recent, larger epics, you're looking at around 100 gigs per game upwards of that going forward, because obviously everybody wants to try and keep up with the latest technology. Everybody wants to have the big flashy things in their games. So file sizes are going to increase. And that means you're going to have only enough space before installing any non-gaming apps. You're only going to have enough space for 4 games at the most. 5 if you download some little sort of indie game. But it's too small. Unless they are targeting a casual audience, the sort of audience that doesn't care for these big AAA titles like, you know, open world games like The Witcher 3, the sort of people that are happy to sit down and play a bit of Unraveled or something like that. You know, the sort of people that are just going to sit down for an hour, maybe 2, just because they've got a bit of spare time before they go about their lives again and they think, I'll kill a bit of time playing this.
Well, that's going to do it for today. I'd love to know what you think about the questions we've asked. Let me know in the comments down below. Remember to like, subscribe, and share it with a friend. And make sure to check back tomorrow, because if you don't, or find out your deepest, darkest fear, then whisper it into your ear whilst brushing your left eyebrow. So, see you tomorrow.